In the ancient Roman Empire, everything had a price. Land was purchased with gold. Loyalty was purchased with silver. However, one aspect was worth more than the other two: salt. We hardly give it any thought these days. It is placed on our tables. Without any hesitation, we sprinkle it on food. However, salt was essential for living in Rome, because you perish without salt. Slowly, not swiftly. Muscles break down, nerves give out, the body stops functioning. Salt was more than a seasoning. It was life itself. The Roman Empire spanned limitless coastlines, cold frontiers, and scorching deserts. Additionally, salt was required in every city, every household, and every legion camp. To keep meat fresh, to sustain soldiers during protracted conflicts, in order to avoid famine. Rome also required mountains of salt since it had one of the biggest armies in history. Rome, therefore, constructed roads not only for trade and troops, but also for the transportation of salt. It inspired the naming of entire highways. The most well-known? The Salaria Via, the Road of Salt, a route that transported salt blocks straight to Rome from the Adriatic Sea. Not grain, not silver, not gold. Salt. Now picture yourself as a Roman soldier. Every day you march miles, you take a nap on the floor, you battle in the bitterly cold rain and sweltering sun. Ration, discipline, and order are essential to your existence. Your body is made of muscle. Salt is necessary for your muscles. If you're short on supplies, you're not merely weaker, you are worthless. Without salt, a soldier is unable to raise his shield. So Rome took a really sensible action. Soldiers received a portion of their pay in salt rations. Salarium was the name of this payment. You were revered if you got a lot of salt. Your commanders were not happy if it was decreased. Your value was determined by your salary. The word evolved over time, but its meaning remained constant. Salary, aka salarium, your paycheck today, is named after salt. This is where the expression "worth his salt" comes from. A loyal man, a strong worker, a disciplined soldier. He is worth his salt. He has earned his value. A lazy or dishonest man, he is not worth his salt. The phrase survives 2,000 years later, proof that salt was not just food, it was power. Salt even shaped empires. Cities like Salzburg in Austria and Salt in Jordan were built entirely around salt production. Wars were fought over salt mines. Families rose and fell over salt monopolies. And because salt could preserve meat for months, it allowed armies to travel farther, fight longer, and conquer more. Salt influenced maps. It influenced trade routes. It influenced civilization. Here's the twist, though. Eventually, Rome collapsed. To lead, not to salt. Rome constructed enormous plumbing systems as it grew, gorgeous, effective, and lethal. Lead pipes carried water. Rich people's blood was contaminated with lead. Their thoughts became hazy. Their choices became illogical. The empire began to deteriorate within. Rome had once been reinforced by salt. It was silently demolished by lead. The lesson is practically poetic. Seldom is what keeps an empire going glamorous. Seldom is what kills it visible. We use the term salary on a daily basis these days. We bargain over it. On papers, we verify it. Our lives revolve around it. Yet very few people know that the word traces back to soldiers marching under the Roman sun, demanding what they needed to live. Salt, the smallest grain, that once built the largest empire on earth. But to fully understand the importance of pay in the Roman military system, we need to look at how Roman legions actually functioned. A typical Roman legion consisted of roughly 4,800 to 6,000 infantry soldiers, along with a smaller cavalry unit and large teams of engineers, medics, cooks, blacksmiths, and animal handlers. These soldiers were not simply fighters, they were also builders. They constructed roads, forts, bridges, siege engines, and sometimes even entire cities. Their pay needed to support not only themselves, but also the logistics networks required for these massive operations. At the height of the late Republic, during Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul, soldiers earned roughly 225 denarii per year. However, Caesar knew that loyalty was often purchased through generosity. To secure the devotion of his troops, he increased their pay and distributed massive war spoils after victories. His soldiers marched across the Alps, besieged fortified tribes like the Helvetii, defeated the Nervii, and eventually fought in enormous battles such as the Siege of Alesia in 52 BCE, where Caesar's men built two enormous encircling walls around the Gallic stronghold, over 20 kilometers of fortifications constructed in just weeks. None of this would have been possible without a disciplined army, whose pay, food, and supplies were organized and reliable. Salt was part of that system, not as a bag of minerals handed to each soldier, but as a critical resource controlled by the state to ensure armies could preserve rations during long campaigns. After Caesar's era came the Marian reforms, which permanently changed the Roman army. Before the reforms, soldiers were typically landowners who served for a set period. After the reforms, the army became professional. Soldiers enlisted for up to 25 years, and service became a career. Pay, therefore, became more structured and essential. If the state could not pay the troops, mutiny followed. One famous example occurred during the reign of Emperor Tiberius, when soldiers stationed along the Rhine mutinied due to delayed pay and harsh service conditions. They demanded higher wages and earlier discharge. Rome learned an important lesson. An unpaid army was more dangerous than any foreign enemy. The situation became even more complicated during the reign of Emperor Domitian and later during the reign of Septimius Severus in the 3rd century. Severus raised the pay of soldiers significantly, but this contributed to inflation and economic instability. As the empire expanded and wars on multiple fronts drained resources, the government sometimes debased its currency, meaning coins contained less silver than before. Soldiers were technically paid the same amount, but the money was worth less. In these moments, commodities like salt regained symbolic importance because they represented something with stable value. A soldier might trust a barrel of salt more than a coin that might lose half its value by next month. Salt also played a central role in Rome's military campaigns across harsh environments. For example, during Trajan's campaigns in Dacia, modern Romania, the legions needed preserved food to survive long winters in the Carpathian Mountains. Salted pork and salted fish made these campaigns possible. During the invasion of Parthia under Crassus, one of Rome's most disastrous military defeats, the failure of supply lines, including salt distribution, contributed to exhaustion, dehydration, and collapse of discipline. Armies march on their stomachs. Without preserved rations, they do not march at all. Even during the Punic Wars against Carthage, salt had geopolitical importance. When Rome defeated Carthage in the Third Punic War, legend says that salt was plowed into the soil to curse the land. While historians debate whether this literally happened, the symbolism tells us how powerful salt was in the ancient imagination. It represented life, survival, and economic dominance. Salt was also essential in Roman culture and daily rituals. It was used in religious sacrifices, funerals, and public banquets. Salt symbolized purification and good fortune. Soldiers carried it not only for food, but also for ritual. To be without salt meant to be unlucky or dishonorable. To earn your salt meant to prove your worth. The empire used salt strategically to maintain power, mines, etc.